The distant echo of hoofbeats faded into the silence as Olivia Nichols clutched her swollen belly, pain rippling through her body like wildfire across the open plains. She had known the baby was coming soon, but not here, not alone on the dusty trail between Missouri and New Mexico territory. Miles from civilization, with night falling fast and storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Montana Territory, 1876. Olivia had been a fool to travel this far in her condition, but what choice did she have after burying her husband James 3 months ago? The homestead they'd planned to build together in Aztec, New Mexico territory, now fell to her alone, her and the child who chose this desolate stretch of trail to make its entrance into the world. Another contraction seized her, stronger than the last. Olivia slid from her horse, nearly collapsing as her feet touched the ground. Her mare nickered softly, sensing her distress. With trembling hands, she tied the reins to a scrubby juniper and braced herself against the trunk of the tree. "Not here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, not here." The gathering storm unleashed its first drops, fat and cold against her heated skin. Olivia dragged herself and her meager supplies beneath a rocky overhang, the only shelter in this barren landscape. She laid out her bedroll, hands shaking with each movement, wondering if this desolate place would be where both she and her baby would draw their last breaths. Miles away, Xavier Kincaid pulled his hat lower against the rain, cursing the weather and his stubborn determination to check the southern fence line of the Diamond K Ranch, despite the threatening storm. At 32, he'd spent more than half his life working this land, first alongside his father and for the past 6 years on his own since his parents had passed. The rain came harder now, slashing sideways with the wind. Xavier was about to turn back when a sound carried on the wind a cry that didn't belong to any animal he knew. He reined in his horse, listening. There it was again. A human cry, a woman's voice. Xavier turned his horse toward the sound, riding hard despite the treacherous conditions. The terrain was familiar to him even in the growing darkness. As he crested a small rise, he saw a horse tethered to a juniper, rain-soaked and nervous. "Hello," he called out, dismounting quickly. "Anyone there?" The reply came as another cry of pain, leading him to the rocky overhang. In the dim light, he made out a woman's form, her face contorted in agony. "Madam," he said, dropping to his knees beside her. "I'm Xavier Kincaid. My ranch is about 4 miles north of here." Olivia looked up at the stranger through pain-clouded eyes. Tall and broad-shouldered, with rain dripping from his hat brim, he appeared like an apparition in her moment of desperate need. "The baby," she managed to say between labored breaths. "It's coming." Xavier removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with rainwater. His eyes, a startling blue even in the dim light, widened at her words. "I'll get you to the ranch," he said, already moving to gather her things. "No time," Olivia gasped, another contraction seizing her. "The baby is coming now." Xavier had helped birth countless calves and foals, but never a human child. Still, he knew enough to recognize the truth in her words. This baby wouldn't wait for proper help. "All right then," he said, his voice calm despite the racing of his heart. "My name's Xavier. What's yours?" "Olivia," she managed. "Olivia Nichols." "Well, Olivia Nichols, looks like we're about to have a baby together." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and effort for Olivia. Xavier proved surprisingly capable. Heating water from his canteen over a small fire he managed to build deeper under the rocky shelter, using clean cloths from his saddlebag, and speaking in that same steady voice that somehow cut through her panic. "You're doing fine," he assured her, though he had no real way of knowing. "Just a little longer." When the baby finally came a girl with a shock of dark hair and healthy lungs that announced her arrival to the wild Montana night, Xavier wrapped the tiny form in his cleanest bandana before placing her in Olivia's trembling arms. "She's beautiful," he said softly, watching as mother and daughter regarded each other for the first time. Olivia could only nod, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at the stranger who had appeared like a guardian angel in her darkest hour. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found us." Xavier nodded, suddenly aware of how cold the night had become. The rain continued unabated, and Olivia shivered despite the small fire. The newborn whimpered against her mother's chest. "You can't stay here," Xavier said decisively. He shrugged out of his heavy leather duster and wrapped it carefully around both Olivia and the infant. "My ranch isn't far. You need warm shelter, food, and rest." "I can't ride," Olivia said weakly. "You won't have to," Xavier replied, gathering her into his arms, the baby nestled securely between them. She weighed almost nothing, this brave woman who had just brought new life into the world. Xavier carried them to his horse, somehow managing to mount while holding his precious burden. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the night had turned bitterly cold. "Your horse," Olivia murmured against his chest. "I'll come back for her," Xavier promised. "Right now, you and this little one are all that matters." As they rode through the darkness toward the Diamond K Ranch, Xavier felt something shift inside him, a thawing of a frozen place he hadn't realized existed. The woman in his arms was a stranger, yet he felt responsible for her in a way that went beyond basic human decency. And the tiny face peeking out from his coat, with eyes that hadn't quite found their focus, she had claimed a piece of his heart the moment she took her first breath. By the time they reached the ranch house, Olivia was drifting in and out of consciousness. Xavier called for his housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, who rushed from her small cabin behind the main house at the sound of his voice. "Good heavens!" the older woman exclaimed, taking in the sight before her. "Bring them inside this instant." The next hours were a flurry of activity. Mrs. Abernathy, who had raised 6 children of her own before being widowed, took charge with calm efficiency. Olivia was bathed, dressed in one of Xavier's clean shirts, and settled into his bed. The baby was washed, swaddled in soft flannel, and fed with some goat's milk. Mrs. Abernathy had cleverly mixed with sugar water using a dropper fashioned from a clean piece of cotton. "She needs her mother's milk," Mrs. Abernathy told Xavier as they stood in the kitchen, the ranch house quiet except for the crackling of the fire. "But this will do until the poor dear wakes." Xavier nodded, staring into his coffee cup. "Will they be all right?" Mrs. Abernathy patted his arm. "The Lord brought you to them, Mr. Kincaid. I believe He means for them to live." The next morning, Xavier woke stiff and sore from sleeping in the chair beside his bed. Olivia was still asleep, her face peaceful now, the lines of pain erased. The baby lay in a makeshift cradle, a drawer from his dresser, lined with soft blankets, gurgling softly. Xavier approached the tiny being cautiously. In the light of day, he could see she had her mother's delicate features but a shock of black hair that reminded him of his own sister at birth. On impulse, he reached down and offered his finger, which the infant grasped with surprising strength. "You're a fighter," he whispered. "Just like your mama." "Her name is Emma," came Olivia's voice, weak but clear. Xavier turned to find her watching him, her eyes a warm honey color he hadn't been able to discern in the darkness, regarding him with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. "Emma," he repeated. "It suits her." "It was my mother's name," Olivia said, attempting to sit up. Xavier moved quickly to her side, arranging pillows behind her. "Mrs. Abernathy says you shouldn't try to move too much yet. You've been through quite an ordeal." Olivia smiled faintly. I remember very little after we arrived here. I should thank your wife for her kindness. No wife, Xavier said, perhaps too quickly. Mrs. Abernathy is my housekeeper, has been since my parents were alive. Oh. Olivia looked around the room, taking in the masculine furnishings, the absence of any feminine touch. This is your room, isn't it? I've displaced you. It's nothing, Xavier assured her. I've slept in worse places than my own chair. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only when little Emma began to fuss. Xavier carefully lifted the infant and placed her in Olivia's arms, trying not to notice the way his shirt slipped from her shoulder or how her dark blonde hair fell in waves around her face. I should leave you to feed her, he said, heading for the door. Mrs. Abernathy will bring you something to eat soon. You need to keep up your strength. Mr. Kincaid, Olivia called after him. When he turned, she met his eyes directly. Thank you for everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Xavier shook his head. No need for repayment, Mrs. Nichols. Anyone would have done the same. But as he closed the door behind him, Xavier knew that wasn't quite true. Something about finding Olivia and Emma on that stormy night felt like more than coincidence, it felt like fate. Over the next days, Olivia slowly regained her strength. Mrs. Abernathy proved to be a godsend, teaching the new mother how to nurse, bathe, and care for her infant. Xavier kept his distance, busying himself with ranch work during the day and taking his meals in the kitchen to give Olivia privacy in the main part of the house. But each evening, he found himself drawn to the parlor where Olivia would sit with Emma, the baby growing stronger and more alert with each passing day. They spoke cautiously at first, exchanging the basic facts of their lives. Olivia told him of her husband James, a schoolteacher who had dreamed of starting a new life in New Mexico territory. They had sold everything they owned in Missouri to purchase land near Aztec, only for James to succumb to pneumonia during their journey. Determined to fulfill his dream, Olivia had pressed on, despite her advancing pregnancy. It was foolish, she admitted one evening, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. But I couldn't bear to return to Missouri with nothing to show for all we'd sacrificed. Xavier shared his own story inheriting the Diamond K 6 years earlier, when consumption took both his parents within months of each other. His sister Mary had married a banker in Helena, leaving Xavier to manage the ranch's 5,000 acres and growing herd of cattle alone. Not completely alone, Olivia pointed out. You have Mrs. Abernathy, and I've seen how the ranch hands look at you. They respect you. Xavier shrugged, uncomfortable with her perception. They're good men. They worked for my father, most of them. They stay out of loyalty to his memory. I don't believe that, Olivia said softly. I think they stay because of who you are. Their eyes met across the room, and Xavier felt that same shift inside him, like ground moving beneath his feet. In just a week, this woman and her child had changed something fundamental about his home, filling empty spaces he hadn't realized existed. On the 10th day, Olivia approached him after breakfast, Emma swaddled tightly against the morning chill. We've imposed on your hospitality long enough, she said formally. Emma and I are strong enough to travel now. If you could spare a wagon to take us to town, I can arrange passage to New Mexico from there. Xavier felt a sudden hollow feeling in his chest. There's no rush, he said. Winter's coming on. Travel will be difficult with a newborn. I need to see our land, Olivia insisted, to make decisions about what to do next. And what will you do? Xavier asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. A woman alone with an infant trying to homestead. Olivia's chin lifted. I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Kincaid, and I've never been afraid of hard work. I don't doubt your strength, Mrs. Nichols, Xavier said quietly, but even the strongest need help sometimes. That evening, after Olivia had gone to bed, Xavier sat long at his desk, making calculations and drafting a letter. When he finally crawled into his bedroll on the parlor floor, his mind was made up. The next morning, he presented Olivia with a proposition. "I've been thinking about your situation," he began as they sat at the breakfast table, Emma sleeping in her drawer cradle nearby. "I have a suggestion that might benefit us both." Olivia regarded him warily. "What kind of suggestion? The Diamond K is doing well, but I've been looking to expand. New Mexico territory has good grazing land at reasonable prices." Xavier slid a paper across the table. "I'd like to buy your land in Aztec." Olivia stared at the figure he'd written. "This is too much. The land isn't worth half this amount." "It is to me," Xavier said simply. "I'm tired of Montana winters. I've been thinking of starting a southern operation for years. This gives me the opportunity." "You're lying," Olivia said, though without heat. "You're offering charity disguised as business." Xavier met her gaze steadily. "I'm offering a fair price for land I genuinely want. What you do with the money is your business. You could go back to Missouri, start fresh somewhere else, or, Olivia prompted when he hesitated. "Or you could stay here," Xavier finished, his heart pounding. "Not as a guest, but as a partner. The Diamond K needs a woman's touch. Emma deserves a proper home, and I—" He faltered, then pushed on. "I've grown accustomed to having you both here." Olivia's eyes widened. "Mr. Kincaid, if you're proposing a business arrangement," Xavier clarified quickly, though even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't the whole truth. "You would have your own rooms, of course. There would be no expectations, just mutual benefit. You get security for you and Emma. I get help running the household and social aspects of the ranch." Olivia was silent for so long that Xavier began to regret his impulsive offer. Finally, she spoke. "I need time to consider this. It's not a decision to make lightly." "Of course," Xavier agreed, relief washing over him that she hadn't immediately refused. "Take all the time you need." As autumn deepened into winter, Olivia's decision remained unmade. Xavier didn't press her, content to have her and Emma remain at the Diamond K while she deliberated. Life fell into a comfortable routine. Xavier managing the ranch operations, Olivia gradually taking over household duties from Mrs. Abernathy, and Emma growing stronger and more alert with each passing day. The first snowfall came in early November, transforming the landscape into a crystalline wonderland that took Olivia's breath away. Standing on the porch, Emma bundled against her chest, she watched Xavier ride in from checking on a distant herd, snow dusting his hat and shoulders. Something about the sight of him strong, capable, returning home to them made her heart beat faster. In the weeks since his proposition, Olivia had found herself studying Xavier when he wasn't aware. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how gentle his large, calloused hands could be when he touched Emma, the deep rumble of his laugh when something genuinely amused him. He had kept his word about maintaining a respectful distance, never crossing the invisible line that separated employer from employee, benefactor from recipient. But sometimes, when their hands accidentally touched or their eyes met unexpectedly, Olivia sensed something more occurrent that ran between them, unacknowledged but undeniably present. That evening, as they sat before the fire in companionable silence, Xavier reading the Helena newspaper, Olivia mending one of his shirts while Emma slept in her newly constructed cradle, Olivia finally spoke the words that had been forming in her mind for weeks. "I've decided to accept your offer," she said quietly. "Emma and I will stay." Xavier looked up, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "You're sure?" Olivia nodded. "This place feels more like home than anywhere I've been in years. Emma is thriving here, and you." She hesitated, then continued more softly. You've been kinder than anyone had reason to be. It's not just kindness, Xavier admitted, setting aside his paper. Having you both here has changed things. The house feels different. I feel different. The honesty in his voice touched Olivia deeply. I feel it too, she whispered. They sat in silence, something new and fragile growing in the space between them. When Olivia finally rose to put Emma to bed, Xavier stood as well, reaching out to touch her arm lightly. Thank you, he said simply, for staying. As winter settled over the Diamond K, the ranch became a world unto itself, isolated by snow and distance from the nearest town. Xavier taught Olivia to ride the gentle mare he'd given her as a business expense, showing her the boundaries of the ranch property on clear days. Olivia introduced new recipes to the kitchen, filling the house with the aromas of her Missouri childhood. Christmas approached, bringing with it a flurry of preparations. Olivia was determined that Emma's first Christmas, though she was too young to remember it, would be special. Xavier found himself drawn into her enthusiasm, riding for 2 days to the nearest large settlement to return with packages hidden in his saddlebags. On Christmas Eve, after they had enjoyed the dinner, Olivia prepared and exchanged modest gifts: a hand-knit scarf for Xavier, a leather-bound journal for Olivia. They sat before the fire, Emma asleep in Xavier's arms. The baby had grown increasingly attached to him, calming immediately whenever he held her, her tiny hands often clutching at his shirt buttons or beard. She loves you, Olivia observed, watching them together. She knows you're the one who saved us. Xavier looked down at Emma's peaceful face. She saved me too, in a way. Both of you did. I didn't realize how empty this house was until you filled it. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to articulate. Olivia moved closer on the sofa until their shoulders touched. Xavier's free arm hesitantly encircled her, and she leaned into his warmth, her head coming to rest against his chest. Is this all right? He asked softly. Yes, Olivia whispered. It feels right. They sat that way until the fire burned low, a family in all but name. As winter gave way to spring, the boundaries between business arrangement and something deeper continued to blur. Xavier found reasons to touch Olivia a hand at the small of her back as she passed, fingers brushing as they exchanged items at the table. Olivia found herself lingering in his presence, seeking his company even when household duties were complete. The ranch hands noticed the change, exchanging knowing glances when their boss detoured through the kitchen multiple times a day or when Mrs. Nichols rode out with a packed lunch to wherever Mr. Kincaid was working. Mrs. Abernathy observed the courtship, for that's what it was, though neither participant would admit it, with approving eyes, often finding reasons to take little Emma with her to her cabin, giving the adults time alone. On a mild April evening, Xavier found Olivia in the garden she had started behind the house, planting seeds in the freshly turned soil. Emma lay on a blanket nearby, gurgling at a wooden toy Xavier had carved for her. Need any help? He asked, crouching beside her. Olivia smiled up at him, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. I thought you'd be busy with the new calves. The men have it under control. Xavier reached out impulsively, brushing the dirt from her face. His hand lingered, cupping her cheek. You're beautiful, Olivia. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't pull away. Xavier, I know this started as a business arrangement, he said, words tumbling out before he could reconsider, but it's become something else for me. Surely you must know that. Olivia's hand came up to cover his. I do know, she whispered. I feel it too. Xavier leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished. When she didn't move away, he pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss that conveyed months of unspoken feelings. When they parted, Olivia's eyes remained closed for a moment, a smile playing at her lips. "I've been waiting for that since Christmas," she confessed. Xavier laughed softly. "I've been wanting to do it since I found you on the trail." Emma chose that moment to let out a demanding cry, breaking the spell between them. As Olivia moved to pick up her daughter, Xavier caught her hand. "I want to do this properly," he said. "Court you the way you deserve, if that's what you want to." Olivia's smile was radiant. "I'd like that very much." The courtship that followed was both traditional and unique to their circumstances. They had already shared a home, already raised a child together, already seen each other at their most vulnerable. Yet Xavier insisted on the formalities, asking permission to take Olivia for Sunday drives, bringing wildflowers he collected on the range, even requesting Mrs. Abernathy serve as chaperone when propriety demanded it. Olivia bloomed under his attention, rediscovering parts of herself that grief and hardship had buried. She sang again, songs from her childhood that made Emma clap her tiny hands in delight. She wore her hair down sometimes when they were alone in the evening, knowing how Xavier's eyes followed the golden waves cascading over her shoulders. On Emma's first birthday, a date they had calculated based on the night of her birth on the trail, Xavier hosted a small celebration at the ranch. The Hands and their families came, along with a few neighbors from distant spreads and Xavier's sister Mary with her husband from Helena. After the guests had gone and Emma had been put to bed, exhausted from the excitement, Xavier led Olivia to the porch, where the summer night spread star filled above them. "I have another gift," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Not for Emma this time." He opened his palm to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond that caught the starlight. "It was my mother's," he explained, voice suddenly rough with emotion. "She made me promise to give it only to a woman who made me as happy as she made my father." Olivia's hand trembled as she touched the ring. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking you to be my wife," Xavier said, dropping to one knee, "to make what we have official in the eyes of God and everyone else. I love you, Olivia. I love Emma as if she were my own. I want us to be a real family." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "We already are a family," she whispered. "But yes, Xavier Kincaid, I will marry you." Their wedding took place in August, a simple ceremony in the garden Olivia had planted. Emma, now toddling everywhere on unsteady legs, served as flower girl, carried down the makeshift aisle by Mrs. Abernathy. Xavier's sister Mary stood as Olivia's witness, while his foreman Tom served as best man. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Xavier kissed Olivia with a passion that made the ranch hands whoop and whistle. Emma clapped her hands and called out, "Papa," a new word she had recently learned, though she had been saying Mama for months. That night, after the celebration had ended and they were finally alone, Xavier carried Olivia across the threshold of the bedroom that would now truly be theirs to share. They came together as husband and wife, their bodies expressing what words had struggled to convey: the miracle of finding love when and where it was least expected. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Olivia traced the scar that ran along Xavier's collarbone, a souvenir from a ranch accident years before. "You ever think about how easily we might have missed each other?" she asked softly. "If you hadn't checked that fence line in the storm." Xavier captured her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I don't believe we would have missed each other," he said. "Some things are meant to be no matter what." "Like a cowboy finding a woman in labor on a deserted trail," Olivia teased. "Exactly like that," Xavier replied seriously. "The moment I saw you, something inside me knew. Even before Emma was born, before I knew your name, something in me recognized you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "I felt it too," she whispered. When you wrapped us in your coat and carried us home, it felt like you were carrying us to where we were always meant to be. As fall painted the Montana landscape in gold and crimson, Olivia made an announcement that filled Xavier with speechless joy. They would welcome another child in the spring. Emma, now chattering constantly and following Xavier everywhere, seemed to understand something important was happening, patting Olivia's still flat stomach and declaring baby with solemn certainty. Life at the Diamond K settled into a rhythm of seasons and growth. Xavier expanded the ranch operations, adding sheep to the cattle that had been the Kincaid staple for generations. Olivia's garden produced enough vegetables to sell the surplus in town, beginning a small but profitable side business. When their son Samuel was born in April in the comfort of their bedroom, with a proper doctor in attendance, this time, Xavier held him with the same wonder he had felt the first time he held Emma. But now, instead of a stranger's child, this was his son, a perfect blend of himself and the woman he loved beyond reason. "He has your eyes," Olivia said tiredly, watching from the bed as Xavier rocked the infant. "And your stubborn chin." "Poor boy," Xavier chuckled. "Let's hope he gets your brains to compensate." Emma, now nearly 2, regarded her baby brother with a mixture of fascination and suspicion. "My baby?" she asked, looking up at Xavier with eyes so like her mother's. "Yes, sweetheart," Xavier assured her, kneeling to her level. "Your baby brother. You're going to be the best big sister." As the years passed, the family grew and flourished. 2 more children joined them, twin girls, Abigail and Hannah, born 3 years after Samuel. The Diamond K prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. The original house was expanded to accommodate the growing family, with a proper nursery, a larger kitchen, and a study where Xavier and Olivia managed the ranch accounts together. Emma, growing into a beautiful young girl with her mother's features and an independence that sometimes exasperated both parents, never questioned that Xavier was her father in every way that mattered. On her 7th birthday, he formally adopted her, making legal what had been true in their hearts since the night he carried her and Olivia home through the storm. The land in Aztec remained in their possession, becoming a winter operation managed by Tom, Xavier's former foreman who had jumped at the chance to run his own spread. Each November, the entire family traveled south, spending the harshest Montana months in the milder New Mexico climate. It was during these trips that Olivia would tell the children the story of their family's beginning, how Emma had been born on a lonely trail, and how a cowboy had wrapped them both in his coat and carried them home. "It's like a fairy tale," Hannah would say dreamily, while practical Abigail questioned the details of childbirth and Samuel pretended disinterest while hanging on every word. Emma, who had heard the story countless times, would watch her parents exchange glances over the younger children's heads, the love between them as strong as ever. Sometimes at night, she would remember fragments from her earliest days, the sensation of being held against a broad chest, the steady rhythm of a heartbeat, the feeling of absolute safety. Though she had been too young to form actual memories, the impressions remained, shaping her understanding of what love should be. On the 10th anniversary of the night Xavier found Olivia on the trail, they stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. Samuel, sturdy and confident at 9, was teaching the 7-year-old twins how to throw a lasso, while Emma, nearly 11 and already showing signs of the beauty she would become, supervised with sisterly authority. 10 years, Xavier marveled, his arm around Olivia's waist. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like you've always been here." Olivia leaned against him, content in the life they had built. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found us that night?" Xavier tightened his hold on her. "I try not to think about it. The idea of you and Emma out there alone." He shook his head. "Providence brought me to you. I'm just grateful I listened." "We've been blessed," Olivia agreed, watching as Emma abandoned her supervisory role to join in the lassoing lesson, her laughter carrying across the yard. "Four beautiful children this ranch each other." Xavier turned her in his arms, looking down into the honey-brown eyes that still captivated him. "You know, when I found you that night, I thought I was saving you. It took me a long time to realize you were actually saving me." "We saved each other," Olivia corrected, reaching up to touch his face, now weathered by years of working outdoors but still handsome to her eyes. The black in his hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, giving him a distinguished look she found even more attractive than his youthful appearance. "Mama, Papa, look," Samuel called, successfully lassoing a fence post. The twins applauded while Emma offered technical critiques on his form. Xavier chuckled. "We should go down before Emma gives him too many pointers. She's going to make that boy feel inadequate." "She's just like her father," Olivia said with a smile. "Perfectionist." "I am not a perfectionist," Xavier protested as they walked down the porch steps. "I just have high standards. Which is why it took you 3 months to ask me to marry you after our first kiss," Olivia teased. "You were making sure everything was perfect." "I wanted to do right by you," Xavier said, suddenly serious. "You deserved a proper courtship, not just a convenient arrangement." Olivia stopped him with a hand on his chest. "I would have married you the day you found us if you'd asked," she admitted. "I think I fell in love with you the moment you wrapped us in your coat and promised to keep us safe." Xavier's eyes darkened. "If I'd known that, we could have saved ourselves a lot of time and missed all the sweet moments of falling in love." Olivia shook her head. "I wouldn't change a thing about our story." As they joined their children in the yard, the last rays of sunlight gilded the scene in gold, a family created not by conventional beginnings, but by a chance encounter on a storm-swept trail, by courage and kindness, by love that recognized itself even in the most unlikely circumstances. Later that night, with the children asleep and the house quiet around them, Xavier and Olivia lay in each other's arms, recounting favorite memories from their decade together. The day Samuel took his first steps, heading straight for Xavier's outstretched arms. Emma's fierce protection of the twins when they were infants. The time they all got caught in a sudden snowstorm during a Christmas tree hunt and had to huddle together in a lined shack until it passed. "Do you remember that awful drought 4 years ago?" Olivia asked. "When we thought we might lose everything." Xavier nodded against her hair, "And then the rain came just when we'd given up hope." "That's how I felt the night Emma was born," Olivia confessed. "I'd given up hope, and then you appeared like the answer to a prayer I didn't even know I'd made." Xavier shifted to look into her eyes. "I've never told you this, but I wasn't supposed to be checking that fence line that night. I'd planned to ride in the opposite direction. Something just pulled me that way, like I was meant to find you." Olivia touched his face tenderly. "You were meant to find us, and we were meant to find you." As they drifted toward sleep, Olivia thought about the long journey that had brought her to this place, this man, this life. The pain of losing James had faded to a distant ache, replaced by the joy of the family she and Xavier had created. Emma, born in such desperate circumstances, now thrived as the beloved eldest child of the Kincaid family, with no memory of the precarious beginning to her life. And Xavier, the cowboy who had carried them home, had become the center of Olivia's world, the foundation upon which everything else was built. His strength, his tenderness, His unwavering love had transformed a moment of crisis into the beginning of a story more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. Outside their window, the Montana sky spread vast and star-filled above the land they loved. The same stars that had witnessed their first meeting on that rain-swept trail 10 years before. The Diamond K slept peacefully beneath that canopy of light, a testament to the family who had made it not just a ranch, but a home, a place where love had found its way against all odds, where a baby born on the trail had led two lonely souls to a happiness neither had dared to dream possible. As sleep claimed them, Xavier's arms tightened around Olivia in a gesture as familiar as breathing. In that embrace lay a promise first made when he wrapped them in his coat and carried them home, a promise to protect, to cherish, to love without condition or reservation. It was a promise he had kept faithfully for 10 years and would keep for all the years to come, through whatever storms or sunshine life might bring. For Olivia and Xavier Kincaid, home was no longer a place, but a feeling, the certainty that wherever life might lead them, they would face it together, with the same courage and love that had brought them through that fateful night when a baby was born on the trail, and a cowboy wrapped them both in his coat and carried them home.